Banks are the backbone of any economy. Even though the Fed is actually a bank, unlike any other bank, it creates money. But what if I told you that every bank has the right to create money? Theoretically, you can start a bank and start creating money, but there is an easier way. Why waste so much money first starting a bank when you can start a cryptocurrency and become a crypto billionaire overnight? At least that's what has been happening lately. If cryptocurrencies seem to you like a scam, then you probably don't know much about the banks. So, here in this video, we are going to take a look at 5 truths about money that banks don't want you to know, because if everyone knew that, that might be the end of the banking system. Or, as Henry Ford said, "It is enough that people of the nation do not understand our banking and monetary system, for if they did, I believe there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning." Storing your money in a bank might seem like a good idea, but let me ask you this. How much extra money do you actually make by putting your savings there? Most people think they'd earn a decent chunk, maybe a couple of percent, right? But if you check the actual numbers, it's way less. Big banks like Citibank give you less than 0.5%. That's almost nothing. Even if you find a bank offering a bit more, it's still less than 1%, especially now when interest rates are super low. Now let's do the math. Your money might grow by 0.5% in the bank, but guess what? Prices of things around us are going up by 2.5% each year. So in reality, the value for your money is shrinking. It's losing its buying power over time. Instead of saving it, you might be better off spending it sooner. If you keep it in the bank, in a few years, what you can buy with that money will be much less than what you can buy today. Plus, when prices are rising fast, like they are now, things like houses and stocks get way more expensive. So, while a bank is a safe place for your money, it's not the place to make more money. It's more like a parking spot. It keeps your money safe, but doesn't make it grow much. In the world of banking, something surprising happens behind the scenes. Money is made out of basically nothing. You might not believe it, but it's true. Usually, people think only the big official bank, the Fed, can make money. They're the ones behind the dollar, and they have the special printing machine. But almost all banks, not just the Fed, can create money in their own way. They can do this based on how much money people put into the bank. Let's say you put $1,000 into Bank A. What does the bank do with that money? Well, they can't just leave it sitting there. They can't even give you much back, like 0.5%, which isn't a lot. So what they do is lend that money to other people who need it, like someone wanting to buy a car or a house. The catch is, when the bank lends your money, they charge a higher interest rate than what they give you. Like, credit card interest can be as high as 20%. That's way more than what they pay you. Now here's the twist. The bank doesn't really tell you who they're lending your money to. When you check your account, the bank shows that your money is still there, and you can take it out anytime. But if your money is still in the bank, where did they get the money to lend to others? This is where something called fractional reserve banking comes in. Banks only need to keep a small part of the money people put in, like just 10%, and they can lend out the rest. Let's say you deposit $1,000. The bank can then make $900 more and lend that out too. So now there's $1,900 in total, even though you only put in $1,000. That extra $900? The bank just made it up. They create it like magic, using computers and digits. Making money can involve borrowing from banks and investing elsewhere. In July 2012, Mark Zuckerberg, then 28 years old, and the 40th wealthiest person globally, with an estimated worth of $15.6 billion, financed his $5.95 million Palo Alto home, located just 3 miles away from Facebook's headquarters, with a 30-year mortgage. The question that arises is, why would someone with billions of dollars choose to get into debt when they can easily afford to buy multiple $6 million homes in cash? The answer lies in the concept of free money, which may sound unreal at first. You might wonder why anyone would give free money to a billionaire, considering that it's not typically a charitable act. The key lies in understanding interest rates. Previously, we discussed how banks offer such low returns on investment that it may not be worthwhile to keep money in the bank. In this scenario, however, it's the opposite. If the money borrowed comes with an interest rate lower than the inflation rate, it's considered free money. In the case of Zuckerberg's mortgage, the interest rate was just a little over 1.05%, while the inflation rate in the US was around 2.5 to 3% at the time. To break it down further, let's consider an example. Suppose you borrow $1 million at a 1.05% interest rate. The average return on a savings account is 2.4%. Even with the lower return, you could make $24,000 a year by depositing those $1 million in another bank. Meanwhile, your monthly payment to the lending bank would only be $10,500, 1.05%. This means you are essentially making a profit of $13,500 annually by borrowing money. The bank, in this case, becomes the loser since the mortgage rate is below the inflation rate. While this might not make much sense for small amounts of money, the impact becomes significant when dealing with large sums. Playing around with 1, 2, or even 0.5% can translate into tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars when dealing with substantial amounts of money. Essentially, when you can borrow money for free or at a rate lower than the inflation rate, it makes more sense to use borrowed funds for investments rather than tying up your own money. The more money you have, the easier it is to get a good deal from a bank. Banks aren't like charities. They're businesses. Their main goal is to make as much money as they can. They've got people they need to answer to, called shareholders, who want the bank to make a profit. If the bank isn't making money, it could go out of business. That's why they prefer lending money to rich people rather than people with less money. Think about it. If you're a billionaire, the bank doesn't worry much about you not being able to pay back what you owe. Even if something goes wrong and you can't make your payments, you probably have valuable things like a business that you can sell to pay off your loan. So, for the bank, lending to someone like you is almost risk-free. Throughout history, banks usually worked with rich or powerful people, like nobles or those who owned land that made money. It's quite different from someone who works a regular job. If that person gets sick, can't work, or loses their job, it becomes really risky for the bank to lend them money. It might seem unfair, but it's like lending money to a friend. Would you feel more comfortable loaning money to a friend who owns a business or one who barely makes any money? Most would choose the friend with the business, even though it's tough. So, if you want better deals on loans, lower interest rates, or nicer terms, you need to improve your financial situation first. Banks also offer great deals to rich people because they want to build a good relationship. They hope that when these rich customers need a bigger loan, they'll come back to the same bank. It's a win-win situation for them. There are new technologies like blockchain and cryptocurrencies that promise to change the system and make banking fairer for everyone. They're opening up banking to more people than ever before. It's a massive change compared to 100 years ago when only a few had access to banking services. Credit cards are like powerful weapons for banks. Many Americans, about 70%, have debt from using these cards, and they say they can't pay it off this year. That's a big deal. When you owe money on a credit card, it's not like owing on something like a mortgage, where you might pay around 3.5% interest each year. With credit cards, it's much higher, often around 20%. If you can't pay what you owe now, it'll grow even bigger later. This means a lot of Americans, 70% of them, might fall into a big debt problem. A study found that over half of the people asked, around 56%, have had credit card debt for at least a whole year. And for many, that debt is sticking around. Almost 20% think it will take them more than 3 years to pay it all off, and about 8% aren't even sure when they'll manage to pay it down. This is how banks make a lot of money. People often spend without really thinking about how they'll pay it all back. They want to keep living at a certain level, even if they can't really afford it. That's why banks are always trying to sell you new credit cards. Now, don't get me wrong, using credit cards responsibly is good for building up your credit score. But if you're not careful with your money, getting into debt with these cards isn't a good idea. And if you liked this video and found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching and see you next time.